Okay, this video is going to be very long. Since now 6 years, I try to make a complete game on my own. I have earlier projects made with a small team, but actually the code was never by me. So this is kind of a weak point here. It's a dream of mine to make a game totally solo, and I'm done with failing. So is it possible for me with just maybe half a year of coding experience? So here are some parameters. 1 hour a day from Monday to Friday, because I run a small business, I have a family, a child, and weekends are family and friends time. The rules: no AI, no ChatGPT or something like that. My resource will be the original Learn2D game dev course by GDQuest. I made the first 10 chapters to learn the basics of GDScript and the Godot engine. From there on, I will move further to more released modules like 13 and 14, which are the platformer modules. I will use them as a solid base and not work with the work files, but I will mirror the tasks directly into my own project, use that as a solid base and move on from there. When I get stuck, I will use the commentary section directly in the course or try to get help on GDQuest's official Discord server. So this time I promise to myself and to you, I will not fail. I will finish this project. I try to get not stuck with the way too big scope like the #1 mistake in game dev. And I want to show you the process as detailed as I can get. That's why it's going to be so long. So you will hopefully get the most transparent experience. And if a normal guy with just no time is still able to make it. So this is maybe kind of a harsh question, but I want to prove that GDQuest is not like everyone else just selling dreams, but really something valuable you can use. So let's see if that works. To help with orientation, I divided everything into 5 chapters. Let's see if they make any sense, and let's go. Okay, before directly diving into chaos, let's start with what works for me best with starting a prototype. 3 things. These are camera, character, and controls. Let's start with the character. The character is the most important thing. It's everything, especially the gameplay, is just setting around this character, and you're experiencing as player the perspective from the player character. So everything you see is directly in comparison with the look or the size of the character. Luckily, I have this idea for my platformer like for years in my mind, and I already have a character. It's a normal young woman that has nothing special except a magical brooch or amulet that can inhabit magic powers. Also, you of course want to ask, how detailed should the character be and how big should it be? This leads us to the next pillar of prototyping, which is the camera. I decided to go with the 16:9 aspect ratio because it's easy scalable and fits for most screens. The GDQuest course platformer modules are like 426 by 240, and this is the one I want to go with too, because I can go with minimalistic pixel art and it's not like hardware hungry. Due to the fact the course uses it, I can directly make simple adjustments and go with the course settings, which is cool. Next thing is or are controls. Don't reinvent the wheel here. I'm like super easy going here. Everything you can basically control with the arrow keys or with the controller pad. So left and right will be running, up or up again will jump, double jump, and pressing down is the interact button. By the way, a heavy inspiration was Astortion, a really cool project by another YouTuber. I think he's a programmer, really genius guy, and his art style really inspired me. I use this as a reference, and also the other reference was, well, my own free pixel animation set. You can download it on itch.io if you want and make your own prototype with that. And even before we dive into 13, the first platformer module, we of course are creating the project. We're making sure the blurriness goes away. I can already implement the idle and the run animation for the character. The cool thing is I already also have a pixel animated character from earlier projects. So then I'm like also making some adjustments to the res and stretch mode in the viewport. And the next thing I'm gonna do is setting the basic controls for the character. Always important to mention is creating a GitHub repository, because I want to version everything. That helps you if something gets deleted or you're doing something wrong or everything is broken somehow, and you can revert it to an older version. That's like gold. I want to focus here on the things that are new to me or I finally understand. And the first thing is, when you think about some complex character abilities, a state machine. And thanks to module 13, I finally get it. In the course, you create several states like idle, jump, fall, or optional is a push state. But now I'm actually able to implement my own new states without making it all a big mess of spaghetti code. And I'm already asking myself later when or where to put logic for sound and VFX effects. With the state machine, it's way easier to organize your code, and when you know what is handled where, the cognitive load is way less than going through endless if statements. Due to the fact my character is always in just one state at once and not like in multiple states, like when you, for example, are adding combat, a simple finite enum-based state machine is what I look for here. And a good thing is that is also mentioned how to debug and see what happens in each state. It's, by the way, always a good thing to sketch down your state machine. While the one I showed you earlier is the one you learn in the course, I also want to expand it to something like this. This is a really early version, just directly after tackling it in the course, but it will shrink as I proceed or move forward. I also had a really cool slide mechanic in one of my old prototypes. There's also a tutorial available for that on my YouTube channel, but I scrapped that. I want to keep things simple this time and maybe later add complexity when the systems work and when I understand them. At this point, I'm kinda in the middle of M13, and I'm kind of missing the practices here that are common in chapters 1 to 10. I know these models now are not just like for the bloody beginner, but still practices would help, I think. Challenges are good. I think these practices were just exactly in the sweet spot between hand-holding, like the typical tutorial, and the challenges from GDQuest, where you were basically on your own. What I really like is when you come to the movement and calculating a jump height and talking about gravity, that GameMaker's Toolkit's video, Why Does Celeste Feel So Good to Play, is mentioned here. This is, by the way, an amazing channel when it comes to understanding good games or design patterns for video games. This dude is awesome. Currently, our jump is far from great, bad air control, and the character is always like jumping the same height. So it's time for implementing a kinematic jump. So the controls should be more forgiving, but also really responsive. By the way, if you want to understand this and how different platformers feel in comparison in terms of movement, there's also a great thing by GameMaker's Toolkit, which is a platformer kit. It's free on itch.io. There you can test out movement parameters from within within the same level from like Mario, Sonic or Celeste and compare them to each other. This is a great thing to get a sense for the variables and how they actually feel. So back to the course again, we are calculating jump speed and we are actually calculating also different gravity values for jumping and for falling, which makes the jump even better. A lot of platformers do it this way. Having more values is great for experimenting. I, for example, came up with kind of a moon gravity jump, and maybe through experimenting you stumble over something that is fun in a way you never thought of. And maybe this changes your game plan in a good way. So I kind of tested different values and extremes and then came back to a really responsive little jump. So time for like skippable jump, defining the jump height depending on when the player is releasing the button. After that we added a double jump. I slightly wanna change it so the player has a like more updraft or updash and then is like slowly gliding to the ground. It's kind of similar to Peach's ability in Super Smash Bros. Melee. This I think has come kind of naturally because when the character has reached the tower, which is the game all about, ascending a big tower, most of the level design is not horizontal anymore, but more vertically. So then a good movement mechanic to use there is good, I think. But somehow Coyote Time, when I implemented it, it was first triggering the double jump directly. I couldn't figure out why in the early process, but later in the video it is fixed and I still don't know why. But yeah, I want to add now more animations. So time for Aseprite. I need a shooting double jump animation for the updraft and also a new fall animation when the double jump fall gravity is the current gravity, making the character slowly slide down. So I gathered some inspiration from Sant 11 from Pedro Medeiros, who is the pixel artist from Celeste. He has a great blog online about pixel art, a lot of tutorials which are really helpful. I opened Aseprite and started, and actually it turned out really easy because mostly the dress or the hair is moving while the rest is still. So 4 frames for like each animation and we're done. Implementation was also easy, and here we go, an updash and a slowly glide down. Actually, I just shared in the comment section if my implementation of that was okay, like to check it. And they instantly gave an answer and replied, and you can even turn on email notifications for replies. So if you have an issue in the course, they are reacting really fast, which is super cool. And I didn't even use the Discord, so it's not necessary at this stage, it seems. So far so good. We got jumping, Coyote Time, a variable jump height through a skippable jump. We have a double jump, updraft, and a slowly glide down. How could I forgot that? We got trees. So we got a squash and stretch for the jump up and the landing moment. So that feels a little bit more organic. Now let's go further. There's a part right after the last subchapter of M13 where you are like encouraged to look more at the bonus files and maybe try to implement something on your own. So I did that and went with the optional push mechanic. And of course I also needed an animation for that, so I did that too. And yeah, the character is cool for now, but I also want to add a little mob or an enemy, because it leads me to an experiment I have in mind. Like, it activates only when the player is in the near or something is happening, and then later it deactivates. So that would kind of work with the tower trying itself to let the character not in the near or be ascended, something like that. But yeah, maybe it's time to finally talk a little about the lore or this scenario, the world the game is playing in. Okay, let's see it through the perspective of my iPad here. Sorry for this. I made this sketchboard on my own, and there are some glue rests and stuff like this. But let's go to Procreate. Here it is, the Tower to God. And yeah, there are really several concepts. In the start, it was just like a Valkyrie who survived Ragnarok or the Dawn of the Gods. I kind of like this design. This is really cool. And it was, yeah, like happening right at the end of Ragnarok, like an endless top-down wave fighting game. Thought of that. And then the character evolved over time. Yeah, and let's go back. And then somehow I thought about what if you take, let's say it's so, if you are listening closely to Ragnarok's story, soon the whole world is flooded by blood of the dead and the fighting. So I thought, why not have her waking up at a beach, absolutely hurt, and just a giant blood ocean around her. And the ocean level is like rising. It's like rising up. And she's like on the last mountain or island, and this one is even bleeding. So the world itself is bleeding. So that was the thought. And there's a concept art for it where she's like landed here and everything is lost, and maybe she meets some survivors on her way up. But still in the end, everything is going to be the blood ocean. So yeah, kind of a desperate trying to survive, really dark thing, what I thought about. Actually, this would be really cool as a first person or third person adventure game, but I'm still not able to do that. So yeah, some kind of references here, and experimented with shapes and a cloak and the amulet here, which was like thought like little helpers, like drones you converted to sci-fi. Then I made a new concept. I tried out new outfits here, several, like she has fought, and there are several pieces stuck together from fallen enemies. So like really torn, worn out. There's the cloak with the brooch. It's the first time I came up with it. And then over some time, the thoughts about her change. I thought more about Lord of the Rings, like Frodo, who's kind of an anti-hero, not able to fight, small, vulnerable, but still has a strong will. And so I came up with a more normal girl, wearing this brooch that makes her special, but except that she's like everybody else. I think it's something I can relate more with. And oops, that's for later. That's for later. And soon I changed the whole last mountain, bleeding mountain idea, and came more to a more Christian approach, I guess, leading to a tower. The tower as a try to reach the divine, like the Babylon Tower, and it failed somehow. So some greedy man ascended it, and since then it's bleeding, and everything the blood touches kills it. So that's a story, that's a lore. I have some NPCs who are unlocking skills here already, just shaping them out, looking for interesting silhouettes because it's a pixel art later. And let's go back to the enemy now. Yeah, so back to the enemy. Patrolling does work, but it doesn't hurt the player. This time I don't want to look up the solutions, but figure it out by myself and try my own thing. And it took way longer than I want to confess. But yeah, I added an area to D as an extra collision to connect the signal that sees the enemy, and it works. Somehow I still get confused sometimes when it comes to collision layer and collision mask, but I get better at that in the process. So that's for the character controller. Next chapter. Okay, we are moving on to M14, which is the last chapter of Learn 2D Game Dev. They still say it's in early access, even if it's already beyond the original scope, which is 10 chapters. But hey, the support is amazing, and let's dive directly into it. This chapter will be a lot about level design, so also tile sets, and for some of you, already nothing new, auto tiling. I'll try to make my own assets here while I follow along. I want to focus on minimalism, as I said earlier, and readability, so the player can focus on gameplay and has a good orientation. And for me, this is easier in scope, so I don't have too much time that I have to dive into the assets, and later also for effects and sounds. Keep it simple. There is a guided tour which is built-in plugin directly into the engine integrated, which is great, where you're setting up a tile set and get to know how this works. I now want to directly jump into Aseprite and make my own tile set. So I created one for the first area of my game, which is a beach and then also a kind of a dead or dying forest. So I really thought a lot about the first session of making assets, and I think what I want to focus on is every asset that is on the gameplay layer. So I won't get distracted too much while still being able to creative and have fun. And yeah, so everything the player will and can collide with, or the enemy, and let's say everything about interacting. I didn't just want to copy the assets from GDQuest, so I dived deep into YouTube and found a great channel with super useful tips about tile sets and creating tile sets for auto tiling, which is Nonsensical2D. A really great channel. You should have a look there. Great guy. Later some for the pre-tower area where the grass is slightly red from the blood or the blood rain. There will be blood rain maybe. And trees who serve like a one-sided platform. Well, I'll use these printer supports as a reference for the dead tree assets with and without collision. Yeah, and also some stone bridges, also like one-sided platforms, and better sprites for the pushable boulder. Make it more cubic. This stuff, it took a lot of time, and yeah, remember I have only 1 hour and 5 hours, 1 hour a day and 5 hours a week, so I really had to hurry sometimes to get things done in the morning. So being efficient was hard while the days passed and soon turned into whole weeks. I really had to remind myself often that I needed to keep it very minimalistic as I planned. And I also didn't implement all the systems I have in mind, so later I make it beautiful, I promise. So I implemented the ground tiles for the test level and some one-sided platforms and the trees, and that's all I need. Now let's move on after we have some tiles to the level design. I was introduced in how to build a level and use repetition with variation to create this level, making it, or making the player slowly be comfortable with it, but without being bored. So maybe you heard of the flowchart. That does not only apply to gaming, but to like everything in life you want to learn, or to the learning skill itself in life, really useful. And it's kind of the same with level design. You as player learn patterns. If they are too hard, you have kind of an anxiety, I can't do it, and you leave. If it's too easy, or you maybe are really fast adapting, then you get bored and then you leave. So it's kind of hard to stay in the middle zone while you're playing, always evolving. So keep the player challenged in the right way is not super easy. Fun, or creating fun through this, that's a whole science. So the chapters are now a lot about auto tiling, and I did that a lot in the past, but now for prototyping I just do it tile by tile. I don't need auto tiling for now, I think, and I like it, everything by hand. I like that, doing everything by hand, even if that's not the most efficient way. This is a commitment I just want to do. I love getting lost in details, so at least at some points I have to be weak and choose that path over efficiency, and I will be more efficient in other parts then. So now I want to try more obstacles. There's a disappearing and reappearing platform, or in my case, some kind of blood crystals that I can use for more level design. I had really fun creating a level around it while playtesting everything. So also with the time counter, so I get sure that you have a certain amount of time that is true gameplay, if that makes any sense. Time for moving platforms, I also implemented that, the ultimate classicer in platforming. Setting it up is straightforward. You just need a platform scene and some path to D, and then you go. And I also couldn't hold myself back and add a little blood effect or blood flow effect, just for the feeling. Maybe it's already final. So this new obstacle gave me enough creative space to add one more level. Current level count is already at 4. I'm not showing everything here, just milestones, but I hope to show many of them, so it gets from now on more and more complex. And in the end of level 4, I changed the moving platform, made it some kind of bouncing that are dipping into the kill plane and coming out again. Really cool. I don't know why, but I left some space or made extra areas for collectibles. I haven't planned that, like super conscious. But yeah, it brought me into the situation that I need collectibles, and it's time to implement them now. They're really useful workbook files in this chapter. So it's not everything shown, but if you like search between the files and the scripts, then you will find features, sprites as a reference and stuff like that. So I did that with the collectibles and bring that into my own project. For the collectible, I even had to look back to the first modules of the Learn 2D Game Dev course, where a spaceship is created and it collects loot. Good that I have a Seyff project file back then when I first tried to mirror a project, because there's logic for the collectible. I could just move it over to my own project, which is great. So testing single levels is cool, but what about connecting them? We should tackle now checkpoints, or better said level ends that lead to a level transition. That's a way more smooth experience for the player. So in the workbook files of M14, it's built around a checkpoint first. So there's a thing you can use as a checkpoint, but also for level transitioning. I really love that approach. Yeah, I had kind of some issues with that, but I somehow changed it into my own version and then it worked. Now the levels are connected, and the collectible counter has also been transitioned to the next level. So that's something new for me. So maybe thinking about some autoload stuff or something like that. We come to that later. So it was time for the first playtesting. Feedback is always good, I think. And I playtested with a friend who said, oh, the disappearing and reappearing platforms are too easy, they are too forgiving. The player is like standing in the air like the coyote from Roadrunner before he even notice there's a way down. So way too easy, great feedback. So I made them more spicy for the feel and it turned out good. Now let's move on to the collectible counter to between two levels. I added a script for the game state and added to auto load settings in my project some small adjustments inside the collectible and also the player script. And after some time, there we go. It's like my first own system here, kind of own system. And yeah, one thing is when you die and you have already collected the collectible within a level, it's not setting -1 or setting it back, because the collectible ways are designed in a way it will not get easier if you collect a collectible, then die and think, oh, then I have to just go the easy way now. No, level design in this game works not like this, so it will be hard. It will be hard to start again, and that's why it's okay, or even more forgiving for the player if you have reached the collectible and then died. That's not as frustrating as losing everything, because there will be no easy way. So yeah, that works. It's probably not the best approach. I left a comment there in the last section of the course, and they also had some feedback on that to make it better, which is amazing. I will come back later to that. But yeah, I kind of was foreshadowing here the next chapter, which is it's time to make an unlock system. I like player progress, like you see in the first Rayman or every other platformer, so let's do that. Later that will be some NPCs you like interact with. I had kind of an idea that the brooch of her can like absorb the power of the NPC, but the NPC then is gonna die. So everybody is like sacrificing their lives to make, or to give her at least the ability to reach and ascend the tower. So it's kind of a tragic group effort. Yeah, something like that. And I want that for the push rock mechanic and also for the double jump, which you unlock just maybe directly in front of the tower or something like that. And I will also do that for the simple jump, because even the simple jump is like seen realistically not possible for a normal human being. It's like jumping up the 3 times of your height or something like that. So I think it kind of makes sense here. I've already got a game state for my collectibles, sorry. So I could use that maybe for the ability unlocking system. Now what we need is an additional script storing the data of the unlockable abilities and maybe some UI stuff that will come later. Maybe dialogue or something like this. Then we also, of course, need an interactable object in game that will unlock the ability. So I made it so that you have like one unlock thing, and then you can use a drop down and just pick what is going to be unlocked. So that's also really good and useful for prototyping. It's still a placeholder, and of course I use the Godot icon for that. I think we now need a level where the push mechanic is really used more. And also we'll add a door and a lever or something, or a button, something like that. So you have a goal, or yeah, where to push the rock. This kind of a super mini riddle, but brings some variety to the more hectic gameplay of a platformer. So you have also some cooler, more relaxing experiences between the high effort platform situations. So more level design will bring these features to action. I thought about 2 new levels. The push unlock after the third of the level, the first third maybe. Of course, a collectible you can go back to if you noticed the rock there earlier, and in the end a level push situation that is like introduced. I also faced a bug when pushing the rock from the right. There was no animation. Just forgot to flip the sprite in the push state. So that's a fast fix. I now need a tile set teasing the next area, like when you're closer to the tower, then the grass is getting more red. I showed that earlier. So yeah, I decided there will be a rain mechanic coming because the blood is deadly, and that brings some excitement to me, like periodic rain, something like that in random time windows when it's raining or when it's not. And this could also affect the enemies, like I said before, appearing and disappearing. So there are slots when the level is a lot easier and you have to hurry, and then there are slots who make it a lot harder. I think this thought is kind of cool. So I set the random amount to like 5 to 9 seconds, but as I move forward in testing, it's like around 5 to 7 seconds. When the player touches the rain, she's gonna die. There will be a dissolve effect. I thought the rain, or better said the blood, is like burning the skin and the flesh for everyone who touches it. So when the character stands in a full rain, a dissolve effect would be more fitting instead of a dying animation or something like that. So everything the player can die from in this game will be related to blood and the towers. So that's fitting for everything, I guess, here. This goes for the obstacles, the enemies, and so on. And I also know how to animate the shader later in code, which is cool. In the Learn to Do Game Dev course, I learned a lot about trees. Like, we used it already for the squash and stretch when jumping and landing. So yeah, I used it now for the shader. I built a shader with the node editor and can decrease and increase the dissolve now. A few more lines in the player script, and there we go. When the player touches the rain, she will be dissolved, and then the scene fades out. After that, she will fade in and dissolve is reversed, so she will respawn. Now I want to test the limits of my ideas around the blood systems and create more. Oh, and one more thing about feedback. When playtesting, my playtester said the character is like slipping, feels like slippery, so I increased the value for her deceleration, and that made a huge improvement. Now it feels a lot more precise and responsive when landing, especially when trying to land on a single tile. So yeah, I now want to add a like passive shield mechanic that can be also unlocked, like the jump or the double jump. Or the push. It still has no visuals, but it works. When unlocking the shield mechanic, the rain won't hurt you anymore. So let's now add a level with some rain situations where the player is really under pressure. Yeah, so I wanted to go on with more levels, but somehow I forgot to commit a whole level to my GitHub, so that was lost. And I had to do it again. And currently I'm like at level 7. And because the player now feels a little bit more safe due to the new shield mechanic, I have to still make the rain dangerous. And then, this is now the situation where the disappearing and appearing enemy comes to life. So rain will stay dangerous, although the player gets a fast solution against the rain via shield mechanic. That's cool. It's like up and down all the time. So I created the state machine for the enemy by looking back at the player state. So I decided first to go with 2 states, inactive and active, and the transitions between it. So the enemy is, basically lying around. When the rain starts in, there comes a transition that will play the activate animation. And after that, the kill box of the enemy is activated. And then the enemy starts directly patrolling. When the rain stops, the kill box is deactivating, and then the disappear animation is played. It stops moving, and just the remains of it indicate where it comes to life when it will rain again. So the next thing was, I need a placeholder thing for the shield mechanic of the player, so it's at least visible and possible to test for others. So I made just a simple sprite with some alpha. So the first area of level 7, it has rain, and it will play a lot with your patience and adapting to the rain rhythm, which is kind of cool. And in the middle area, there will be the first checkpoint of the game, because the levels, as you get closer to the tower, will tend to get longer and more tough. So but I need something that will make the safe zones more dangerous. The enemy is not enough, I think. Otherwise, the player could just wait for the rain to happen. So there's something that has to fill the gaps between there. So it's time to present the blood flower. I quickly made a flower in Aseprite that works just like the blob enemy, and I use the same state machine for that. This reduces the areas where the player can just stand and wait. And it goes with the same principle as the enemy. The flower activates when it rains and then emits some spores or something that is like blood and killing the player. So there I placed some flowers in a way that they're just between enemy routes, and when the player gets stuck there, it has to constantly evade the patrolling enemies while it's raining and just survive this until she can move further. Cooler than I thought in the beginning. So after some time I was ready for a really big level and kind of final level before reaching the tower. This is having 3 rain areas with 2 checkpoints in between. Enemy encounters, waterfalls of blood, more blood pools than ever, crossing a big river in the first 2 parts. And part 1 is basically a long land part. You have to run really fast through it. Part 2 is a lot of disappearing platforms, moving platforms, and a big blood pool river as the ground, and only a few rest parts where also enemies are. Crossing the river with moving platforms, a long straight line, a lot of waterfalls. But then part 3 is mostly up a hill with 2 waterfalls and a lot of more bushwalk situations. I don't know. I skipped that and made it more hectic. So before doing the level where the player finally reaches the tower, let's add something. While playing with keyboard is nice, I also want to support the controller inputs. And that also makes sense, because why not make it work on Steam Deck later? And then comes the tower. As you make it to the tower, you're just like about 1/3 to the half of the game through. I needed a tileset for the tower, and I kind of like the one I came up with in Aseprite. It's an overworked version of the brick tileset that comes with the platformer module. Very useful. Also hidden in the workbook files. I wanted it to make it look bloody, with a lot of blood flowing and half-dried from up to down. So the blood signs are everywhere in the gaps between the joints of the stones. And within the level there will be two interactables. First, a scene that will appear when reaching the tower to make it kind of dramatic, and this may be also the cover of my game, an intimating moment where she looks like up the tower. You see how small she is, how hard this task is gonna be. There's already a really tough journey behind her. So yeah, it has to have a really big effect. And then there will be a second interactable that will unlock the double jump. Just, yeah, to make it possible maybe to access the tower, because the main gate is locked and there's just a gap in the stones really, really high above. Yeah, I think that's enough for the part to reach the tower, and for the gameplay, it's also good. And it's all made possible with no special mechanic or so. I like that also really much. This is just until the tower, it's just basically, yeah, the passive shield mechanic, running, jumping, like in every platformer, and the push mechanic. And when I compare this, what I already have, with the first game I made with Godot, which was a little platformer called Relic Hunter on my HIO. Yeah, I'm really happy if I see that in comparison. I mean, Relic Hunter was like with hand-drawn art, but feels so better, my game now, to play it already in this early stage. And this is really cool. This hypes me up. And the best thing, I'm now able to watch tutorials, but I'm not reliant on them. I can use the stuff I see and build it directly into my own systems. And this is the great stuff from not knowing how to make a simple enemy collision interact with your player character. So yeah, a lot of stuff happened between these two steps you're not maybe getting, but there's a huge journey within this video, and we need now the dramatic scene when reaching the tower. Okay, we need something that is narrowing down the experience of the game to one single image. A cover, a thumbnail piece, something they can use for the main menu, for the scene I just talked about, and maybe something for YouTube. It has to explain what the character is going through, and I already talked about the effect. And it turned out I don't want to use the typical hero looks at stuff at the horizon thing that is used for so many game covers. I want something else, and yeah, it somehow clicked. I came up with two concepts. You can see here. This is just the fast thumbnailing. So what about showing the character exactly at the moment where she's right before the tower, and a focus on her face. She's like maybe a close-up. This is going to be very personal, but she's like holding her amulet and dramatically looking up with some pain or exhaustion in her face. This is cool. I really like it. I don't know how far the camera should be zoomed in, but let's see. And in version B, the character is in the same position, but the camera is like at her feet looking up, just giving us an impression how massive high this tower is. I like both ideas and I will explore them more. I know how these thumbnails look just right now, but let's see if I can make something beautiful out of that. Time for Blender block out. First I will need a base mesh that is easy to pose. Let's go with some official Blender resources here. There's a great base mesh pack, like a whole character pack. And the best thing, it's already ready for posing. I go for a female base mesh, and I can later use some cloth physics to simulate her Rex or the rag dress she's wearing. So yeah, some hair has also to be added, and then it may be a lot more easy to overpaint the rendering. So I threw this model and some refs in a Blender scene, plus a cylinder for the tower. Let's see what I come up with. For me, it came super fast to have directly 5 perspectives that look really interesting for me. And to be honest, I can't really decide which one I want to go with. So I added some hair and some textures for the feeling. and a little glow effect on a brooch. I ended up with two perspectives I really like. I wanted to pursue the one where she's directly looking up to the tower with a look to the sky, so option B. I want to go with Aseprite, so also a pixel cover here. That stuff needs to be exactly the same size like my game is, so 426 by 240. This took me a lot of time. I also took my time and stepped just into the process and explained a little bit more. I started with the clothes sim for a dress. I photo bashed a circular sky in the background around the tower. I somehow think that works great. It looks dramatic. It looks impossible to send it as a normal person. I know the perspective is kind of off, but it still works for the view, and that's the most important thing for me. So yeah, it's underlined by the fact that there is no door or similar stuff that I'm showing in the picture, that it's so hard to ascend it. That's cool. I have, for Aseprite, basically also it's really good structured. You have just like 3 layers. You have the intimidating sky, as a background, you have the tower as the middle ground, and then there's the character in the foreground. So let's do the background first. Kind of don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but it kind of slowly looks like a sky. Maybe it's already a lot too brown. I want to keep it more red because it also rains blood. So I should try a new color palette for the clouds. So I looked for red skies and came up with this. I had some issues with the inner circle of lighter colors, but for now I'm super happy with the result. I love it. Next one is a tower which lays in the middle ground. Actually, this stuff looks interesting, just like limbs. I love the metaphor of a tower made of corpses to reach the divine, like you see this stuff in Elden Ring or also in Warcraft, where they're just like sacrificing people to open the gates to travel between worlds. Gul'dan did this. And also a thing you see in capitalism, right? I keep that in mind, but let's start simple here and focus on the overall shape of the stones. It should look dark, and so there's a nice contrast to the blood flowing down from the stones. Man, I do hard struggle with the joints. Somehow they always look off. This was really hard and took some few or many tries. After that, time to lighten up the stones and then replace some colors. That was a process I did like all the time, testing out colors. Also added the blood running down the tower to add extra dramatic details. I don't know if the perspective is right. Yeah, I complained about it earlier, but it's still working, I think. Now for the foreground, bringing the character in. Although I have a lot of refs in Blender and I put them to Aseprite, I tried this time to use them only when I'm totally stuck. And most of the process from my memory for her. I did a lot of changes to her. So first block out for the most important shapes will do. I just took a lot of time to get her somehow right, but no matter, I like it a lot. And while the weeks are passing by, I got distracted a little bit, as always. But somehow I wanted to bring the brooch of the main character to life. So I grabbed my Procreate sketches and modeled in a Blender. I was a little bit rusty using this program, but with some noise texture and the gold material, it looks really cool. Now that I got the cover and also have one thumbnail for YouTube, I also want to try something great especially for YouTube. I want to test 2 thumbnails against each other later, so the official cover in pixel art and also something why not draw in Procreate. So yeah, I thought about a Godot icon on the left side and maybe an arrow and then the character portrait of my character in the background, maybe the tower also in the background. Let's see. Back to the 3D model of the brooch. Maybe the brooch model is a good addition to my cover in combination, I thought, with some font to make it complete. So I added the text and I like it. It's nothing fancy, but a bit gold. And I also put the brooch in. Maybe that's not the most creative way to play with the brooch because it looks like an O and there are a lot of O's in the text, but maybe later, let's see. So yeah, I made back to the thumbnail sketch, I made a lot of changes to her. I wasn't too happy with the anatomy, a lot of fixes, and then I was, yeah, like switching back to the cover, changing the text and make it more be affected by the light of the sky to make more, yeah, look realistic, which was also a good choice, I think. I'm sorry for switching topics all the time, but this was kind of a creative flow and I tried to explain it in the chronological way I have experienced it. So yeah, well, what about the artwork now? When you reach the tower, there has to be an interactable when reaching the tower, therefore I need an interactable. First, I added the action interact to the input system, and I also added more controller and keyboard inputs to make it play more versatile, like with the control stick or the D-pad, so you have more options to control the character, or the arrow keys, not only via ASD. And yeah, the interactable is one thing, but I also made an interactable component for the player scene, so I don't have to handle everything in the player script, which is now really long, and that's kind of a good choice, I think. The problem is here I'm really learning fast and I'm just scratching my head already about stuff I did like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I have to handle that somehow. So time for the thumbnail. Again, back to the thumbnail, starting with the skin. I start to realize how complex this is gonna be. Imagining the arrow in the middle is emitting light on the face, and the main source of light, while the tower in the background has some rim light. Yeah. So I grabbed some values from an old Aseprite study and worked from that. And there's also amazing lighting scene setup on ArtStation by amazing artist, and this helped me really a lot to figure out how the light was affecting the face on which angle. And yeah, I am super happy with the result. I also used an overlay layer for adding colors later more easily. And top switch again, I have a Bamboo Lab A1 Mini, so I couldn't stop the idea to mind to print the brooch I modeled earlier in Blender, so I did. The process was straightforward. I rotated it a little bit to minimize the surface that is touched, the ground for less supports. And after about 2 hours, I had it. I had the finished brooch. Nice. Getting off the supports, and there we go. Welcome to the family. I still have it here. There it is. Next thing will be the hair, the dress, the broke of the character in the thumbnail. I really think I will totally fail in this while even looking at the references. It was really tough for me to somehow make this thumbnail work, to be honest. It may be no masterpiece in the final version, but when I look at the portrait of her I did before in front view, for me that is such a big step forward, and that what counts. A good question. This video was really about prototyping. I'm making kind of a cut here. The greatest experience was finding out if my ideas are possible, about the blood rain for example, and creating gameplay and systems. This was the first time I was able to like make a direct bridge between idea and making when it comes to code, and it's huge. So yeah, creating gameplay and systems was in that way a totally new and great experience for me. Part 2, I will make maybe more parts, let's see, will be about ascending the ever-bleeding tower. There I keep implementing new stuff like obstacles, enemies, a madness mechanic for the final room, and some other stuff, some kind of a life health system to make it harder. And I also want to bind in the collectibles in these systems. Let's see how that works. Maybe a true ending for having all the collectibles at the end, something like that for the hardcore players, but still within one game mode. Not like a hard mode, a normal mode, or an easy mode. I don't like that. I want every player to have the same experience, but still choose how hard it will be, without having in mind, oh, it shows easy. I feel like low, I feel like bad. I don't want to have this. So then maybe after having all systems implemented, I will go for polish, story, menus, music, sounds, more particle effects, preparing the release on itch.io. Then at the final part, prepare a Steam page and the Steam Deck release. My dream is not only to develop it on my own, but also to play it on my Steam Deck. This would be so cool. Yeah, for the ones who just start out with game dev with Godot maybe, please check out my video about Godot and GDScript. I linked it in the description, like all the other stuff I mentioned in this video. And yeah, just one more thing. Is GDQuest just selling dreams? No, I think this course and the community around it are some of the few who are not just making tutorials. They are true experts. It's a breathing community with a lot of potential. And yeah, I really think I got a lot closer to fulfill my dream than at the beginning of this project. Not overwhelmed, not overscoped. This is going to work.